Hello everybody, it's Kate here and welcome to February's Mosse on a Monday. By now you will know the drill, two non-fiction, two fiction books that I've loved. Some are classics, some are out now and some are yet to come. So I'm going to start this time with a new novel. It's just out now by Suzie Wilde called Landfall. Now it is the third in a trilogy called the Book of Bearer trilogy. But it can be read as a standalone, and give it a go because if you love it, you can go back to the beginning. It's the story of a young girl in the 8th, 9th century. It's a Viking story, although the author doesn't really like using Vikings. And it's a quest about who this young woman is. It's a slightly magical world. It's all about the old gods and the new gods. It's sort of Iceland and Greenland. And it's very much the power of the water and the power of kind of, I suppose, divination. She is a Vala, and she's somebody who can therefore is part of the community who kind of can see what's going to happen in the future. So she's part of the community, but separate. Now, the first novel, I suppose, Sea Paths, is a coming-of-age novel. The second one, Obsidian, is a quest novel. And this one, Landfall, well, you know, it's actually a love story. The character is Bera, the lead character, and she is an extraordinary young woman. She's kind of now in her late teens. She's seen a lot of heartbreak, a lot of terrible things have happened to her community. There's Viking pirates, many people have been taken, and the novel starts in media res, right in the middle of it, with the death of her husband. And she is on the longboat, the Raven, with her stepson. And they are going back to the village that they came from. And when they arrive, there's no smoke coming from any of the houses. No animals come to meet them. There's no sound at all. And so it begins. It's got the texture of a thriller. But at the same time, she's a beautiful writer, Suzie Wilde. But it's a wonderful thing to see this young female character who's very much the hero of the story. And everything is about a community. Should they stay or should they go? Wilde captures the sea extraordinarily. I'm writing about the sea at the moment for my new novel, The Ghost Ship, and Suzie Wilde, who is a sailor, really knows the sea, but also the atmosphere, the smell of the peat, the cold, the way that people lived, the way that they were always having to keep moving, the sense of threat at any moment. So I really recommend this. It's published by the crowdfunding publisher called Unbound, but you can absolutely seek the copies out. And anyone who likes fantasy, anyone who likes brilliant historical fiction, I think will fall in love with Bera. So this is Landfall by Suzie Wilde, published by Unbound. Now, my second choice is a book that came out in 2019, but it's such an important book and such a powerful book that I wanted to share it with everybody. And it's called War Doctor, and it's by, well, he's a professor actually now, David Nott, and he is a surgeon specialising in vascular surgery, and he works at St Mary's in London. But he, for various reasons, epiphany reasons, as he describes it, he decided that he would be somebody that would volunteer for Médecins Sans Frontières and go into some of the most dangerous places on earth. And this is his story about how he first went to Sarajevo, how he told his new bosses when he'd just become a consultant that he was going to go and help the siege in Sarajevo back in 1993. And he talks about all of the countries that he goes to, Afghanistan, Iraq, very particularly Syria, where he has an enormous body of friends, I suppose, now, and has been there several times, Democratic Republic of Congo. What is extraordinary about this book is its honesty. David Nott, who I've been fortunate enough to meet, is a lovely man, smiling, lovely man. And then you read this and you realise that he has seen things that nobody should see. And he manages to talk about conflict, about what it means to be a white doctor going into other people's countries and conflicts, and to be a surgeon, and to go in partly to train other people in more recent years, but you know, the tension, if you like, between the outsiders and the people who live there all of the time. He talks about the cost to himself, of this, and he did have a catastrophic breakdown finally when he came back from one of the places that he went. And he also talks about, you know, the funny side of things alongside some of the terrible things. What is really so distressing in the book is to read about the first intimations of quite how terrible the Taliban were going to be for the people of Pakistan and Afghanistan, where he was, and some of the things that happened, the beginning of what we can now see as femicide in Afghanistan today in 2023, but he was there, you know, back in the 1990s. There are also some absolutely wonderful stories. When he came back and was invited, because he had been on the Eddie Mayer show and started to talk about Syria and what were people doing. And he was, you know, like Nicholas Winton or like a Mary Elms trying to save the children in that conflict in Syria. And he was invited as a result onto the Today programme, and that made a huge difference to the war effort. And then he was invited for a private luncheon with the Queen and Prince Philip and various other people. And he says, looking back, he could see that he was in the early stages, you know, severe PTSD, and he simply couldn't really speak. And he went along to this lunch and he could feel himself getting more and more distressed. And he learnt that the Queen at a lunch always talks half the time to the person on her right and then half the time to the person on her left. And when it came, she turned to him. She said, "Where did you come from?" And he tells this story in the book, and he says she was clearly expecting him to say Hammersmith. And he said, Aleppo. And then just couldn't speak and was sweating and you know, it was terrible. And he then goes on to say that the Queen just simply summoned a courtier who opened the door and let the corgis in. And the corgis came rushing to her and under the table, and then she was brought of course, a silver dish, and she gave him what was inside, which was a biscuit, which it turned out, he said he wasn't sure what he was supposed to do with, then he realised it was a dog biscuit. And for the rest of the lunch, they just sat in silence, feeding the dogs biscuits under the table. And when it was time to go, she just put her hand on his hand and said, "That's better, isn't it?" Now, the book is full of stories like that, but it is what it takes to be somebody like this that goes, because it matters that we have humanity. It matters that we see everybody as somebody's son, daughter, like wife, lover, friend, aunt, whatever it is. And this extraordinary double life that he leads, you know, at home in England as a consultant in the NHS and with private patients, and then going to these extraordinary places. What's not in the book is his recent experiences in Ukraine, and many of you will have heard him talking about that. He's a man of enormous courage. This is the most beautiful book. The only warning I would say is that it makes, you know, made me feel, what the hell have I done with my life? He has, with his wife Ellie, the David Nott Foundation, and what he now does is trains doctors, local doctors as it were, to go into the war zone, so giving all the skills that might be needed for trauma surgery in what they call austere or hostile environments. So I can't recommend this enough. David Nott, War Doctor. If you didn't read it when it came out, read it now. And it's published by Picador. Now, my second non-fiction choice for February is a book that's not out yet, so I'm sorry about that, but I've just read it, and it's a wonderful book. Comes out in April. And it's by Natasha Carthew, and its subtitle is A Cornish Memoir of Poverty, Nature and Resilience. And the actual title is Undercurrent. This is the proof copy. I don't know what the book will look like in the bookshops. Now, Natasha Carthew is an extraordinary writer, and she's a beautiful writer and a poet about the sea and the Cornish landscape. And that's how I'd first come across her. But she also is very influential in setting up the Working Class Writers Movement, the Working Class Writers Festival. And she's very dynamic in saying that everybody, whoever they are, that has something to say should be supported and given the opportunity. And then they can live or die on their own work, but they're not being left out, the voices are not being left out. And this is obviously incredibly important, that diversity includes class as well, and all of the opportunities that don't necessarily come the way to people who haven't got access into publishing, or people that they know that might put their manuscripts into the hands of literary agents, or, you know, all of that kind of thing, the demystification, if you like. But the thing I would say about this is a memoir. It's about what it is like to be Cornish and to live in a place which is slowly, in a way, being taken away from the working class people whose families built the village. Her family in the village that she grew up in go back generations and generations. Every house was built by one of them, every boat was part of them, but little by little, what we might call gentrification has meant that those houses have become unaffordable for local people, and Cornwall in particular has become a place where many, many people from outside, and now of course that's fine, because we should all be able to live wherever we want, whoever we are, whatever country it is, and call a place home, but it is about how the people whose land it is are pushed off that land. It's about her own very, very tough upbringing, and I won't give you any spoilers, but it's pretty bleak. But it's more importantly her enormously elegiac and beautiful way of writing about what it means to be a young girl and then a young woman, understanding that you are something called poor, that you just don't have the things that other people have, and that you've got no chance of getting them, and that people look down on you. They don't want to know who you are, the other children in your school, because they know where you live, and they make assumptions about the sort of person you might be, or you know, what you're going to do with your life. And she has, you know, very significant challenges to overcome and goes quite significantly off the rails at certain moments. But it's the story really about, even when all of that was happening, she knew that words would save her, and that writing mattered, and that her voice mattered. It's incredibly powerful, this sense that she deserves to be heard. And beyond that, I would say, she is a beautiful writer. Most of my fiction and all of my non-fiction has landscape, I suppose, behind it, a sense of place behind it. But Natasha Carthew has this amazing ability to summon up a day on the beach with 3 or 4 sentences. The sound of the sea, the look of the sky, the stars, the fact that she had nothing, but she also had everything, because she knew where to look for the treasure, if you like. It's a beautiful book. I read it in one sitting, in awe of her writing as much as anything else. And I think it will be a book that will make many people think about how we share the world with everybody who lives in it, you know, wherever they come from and whoever they are. So this is Undercurrent, and it's published by Coronet, and it's going to be out in April. Perfect springtime read. So my final choice, my second novel, my final choice for February's Mosse on a Monday. I almost can't believe I'm about to say this, but it is the first novel from a debut novelist who has had a volume of short stories published before, and the title is The Making of Another Major Motion Picture Masterpiece. It's coming out later in the spring, and it's by a chap you might have heard of called Tom Hanks. Now, this is coming out in August, and this is the proof. The book won't actually look like this. And I don't normally like to do a book that's coming out so far in advance, but I just kind of had to, because I've never before not quite known how to describe a novel. And honestly, I hardly know how to tell you what this novel is like. All I can say is, you've got to read it. It's really extraordinary. It will probably come as no surprise to anybody that Tom Hanks, who is obviously an extraordinary actor and obviously a top human, can write, but he can really write. And this is a book about, oh God, what it is a book about. It's a book about how movies get made. It's a book about how things are in fashion and out of fashion. It is about Hollywood. It is set in the present day, but right back into the 1940s. It's the story of a tiny book and then a comic book, and right at the end, I'm just going to show you some of these illustrations. There's fantastic and beautiful illustrations about how a project is made, if you like, and how many films fall to pieces. But at the same time, it is a novel with this extraordinary individual voice. So I'm just going to read you from the beginning, because in a way, I can't do more than share Tom Hanks with you. And the first chapter is called Backstory, and all of the chapters have got stories that are to do with film and how a major motion picture gets made. So backstory, source material, development hell, prep, and so it goes on, the shoot and post. So there are 7 chapters, and it follows the making of a movie. And it just starts, and from the second I started reading, not that I was sceptical about being sent a novel by Tom Hanks, I just thought, well, I didn't know what to expect at all, but it's like nothing I've read. I mean, it really isn't. So it starts like this. A little over 5 years back, I had a message on my voicemail from one Al McTeer, which I heard as Al McTeer, from a number in the 3110 code. This no-nonsense woman asked me to call her back regarding a thin little memoir I'd written called A Stairway Down to Heaven, about my years of tending bar in a small subterranean club that played live music way back in the 80s. At the time, I was also, sort of, a freelance journalist in and out of Pittsburgh, PA, and I wrote movie reviews. I got very few voicemails from Los Angeles, California. My boss read your memoir, Ms. McTeer told me. He says you write like he thinks. Your boss is brilliant, I told her, then asked, who is your boss? Now, obviously, I read that terribly, but it doesn't really matter, because the point is, it's not often that you read something that kind of isn't your thing. This is the weirdest thing, why I'm recommending. This isn't really my kind of book, in that I'm not obsessed with the film industry. I'm not interested in 40s and 50s Hollywood, except the fact that I'm interested in anything, and curiosity is great in a book. But more that it is extraordinary when you start reading something and you just keep reading because you've really not read anything like it before. So I thought I just had to share this with you. It's not out till August, so that's quite annoying for you all. I really understand this. But seriously, ladies and gents, the making of another major motion picture masterpiece, Tom Hanks, it's really something. And I think, the people who love this and love movies are going to love it. But the rest of us, you've got to give it a go. It just goes to show that it's about imagination. It's about imagination and seeing what you can do. And this book really blew me away. So there we go. So that's it for Mosse on a Monday for February. I will be back in March, even though, ladies and gents, by that stage I will be on tour for my one-woman show. If you go to my website, you'll see when I'm coming to a town near you. I'm coming to a lot of towns, so I'm bound to be near some of you at some moment. I've finished editing the new novel, The Ghost Ship, which comes out in July. But for now, this is Kate Mosse saying, as usual, doesn't matter what you read, but enjoy it. Bye for now.